Let's break down one of my favorite press variations, the half kneeling side press. I really like to use this for movement prep if we're prepping for bent press, even for upper body pull or back days. I like using it for shoulder days and as accessory work to help stabilize the shoulder. And it's a nice blend of strength and mobility where we are working shoulder abduction, shoulder external rotation, shoulder adduction, and some scapular work for a really well-rounded shoulder. And I almost like to think of it as like a press with the lats. So we're going to focus a lot on the lats loading and pressing in this movement. We're really working the shoulder on a totally different angle than we would in overhead press. So I'm going to demonstrate real quick and then we're going to break it down. So the half kneeling side press is done in a half kneeling windmill position. So I've broken down the windmill and included this half kneeling windmill in one of my previous videos. So if you want a breakdown of this a little bit further with the hip hinge and getting into this base position, then go back to that previous video and learn how to do the half kneeling windmill all the way to the standing windmill. That's going to apply to this movement as well. So we'll start in a half kneeling windmill position with the kettlebell or your weight already pressed up. So from this base position, I've got a perpendicular arm to the ceiling or the floor. I'm going to take my press on this angle. So I'm combining hip, spine, scapula, shoulder, elbow, and even wrist work. Mobility work and stability work in this position. I'll just demonstrate from this angle so you can see the scapula and spine at work. So I drop the elbow and I press out of that position. Because we're pressing from that really retracted scapula position, we're going to get a lot of rhomboid work, which are in between the scapula, mid-trap, and a lot of rotator cuff back of the scapula musculature work as well. So let's break down the upper body motion and then put it together with the base position and then add weight to it. So I'm going to show you a breakdown with a band. We're going to do it from an upright position first because starting in this sort of inverted position can get a little confusing. So I'm going to wrap my band around something stable. And if you're following along, you don't want anything too heavy. And you want that knot to be about shoulder height, maybe a little bit lower. So you're going to pull yourself away from the band so we've got some tension there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to rotate your palm and your fist towards the ceiling. So that's going to externally rotate the shoulder. Then from here, we're just going to work the scapular retraction, protraction first. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pull that band towards me without bending the elbow. So you're going to pull the band towards you just by squeezing that scapula towards the spine and then protract. So here's that scapular retraction work I was talking about where those rhomboids are really helping to squeeze the scapula across the body towards the spine. The scapula just kind of glide along the back. So we want this scapula to move on the frontal plane or laterally to get the most benefits out of our back work. So once I have that retraction, protraction, just go ahead and try a couple more. Now I'm going to add the press. So I'm going to start with that retraction. Again, the fist is facing up. Start with that retraction and then keep the elbow going in that direction. So I'm trying to pull my elbow to my rib cage and then I'm trying to go behind my rib cage. So I'm going to feel a really deep contraction in the lats here. And then I'm going to slowly release that tension. Okay. So as you retract, you're just going to keep that elbow going in the same trajectory and extend. Retract, pull that elbow across. So we're really pulling into this deep elbow flexed position. And let's do one more retract, pull, and extend. Now you could of course do this without the band as well. Okay, so now I'm going to show you from the front. We'll do the left side. So starting with just that external rotation and retraction, protraction of the scapula, I'm going to turn the palm up. Then I'm going to start by retracting. Now make sure that as you're going through this retraction, protraction, that the shoulder's not lifting towards the ear. We want to keep that shoulder nice and depressed so we can get as much lat work as possible. So we're going to keep the upper traps and the neck out of the movement. We're going to keep that shoulder down away from the ear. So we're going to retract and then protract. So again, we're moving those scapula on the frontal plane or laterally. Pull. And then as we're doing that, we're continuing to externally rotate from that shoulder by turning the palm and the inside of the elbow up. Now let's add the elbow to it. Try not to rotate your body too much towards it. We are going to use some spine rotation, but for now, we're just trying to isolate the upper body. So we retract, pull. So we'll feel that really deep contraction in the lats. And again, retract, pull. Always want to make sure that we get that nice little pause in there as well. Hold. Last one. So because that palm is still facing up, we're also getting some external rotation from the elbow. The elbow rotates the forearm. So we're not only just rotating that humerus, the upper arm bone from the shoulder, we're also rotating the forearm from the elbow. So we're getting external rotation of the entire arm as we bend and extend. So now let's combine that with the half kneeling windmill base position to get our body sideways, and then we can use gravity to help pull us into that end range that we were actively pulling into previously. So from a half kneeling position, let's go with the right arm, right leg first. So the right leg will be in front. We're gonna open the right leg out towards 3 o'clock, somewhere between 2 and 3, and your body's gonna face in the middle of that. And we can try this without external load first, but just imagine that you're gonna grab your weight, you're gonna press it overhead. So we're doing this movement with a lighter weight than what you would normally press with. So this is not your 1 rep max overhead press. This is a lighter weight since we are working into really deep ranges of motion here, and the press is not in an overhead orientation. So we do press overhead first, then we take your left hip and you reach it towards your left heel. As you do that, the arm is staying perpendicular to the ceiling. So I'm sitting my hip down, but my arm is staying in that orientation towards the ceiling while my torso switches its orientation. Then we place that left hand out in front of the knee. The further out you go, the deeper we're gonna get into that hip hinge, the more sideways that press is going to be, the more difficult it's gonna be. So if we're just starting out, you may wanna start up here and then eventually work your way lower and lower. Now from here, we're gonna imagine that we are pulling the band. So you're gonna rotate the arm, just like we practiced before. You're gonna start with that retraction of the scapula, driving the shoulder blade towards the spine. Then we're gonna drive that elbow behind you. Okay, so as I do that, I am gonna allow that spine to rotate a little bit more to get into that deep position. From here, we're feeling that contraction of the lat. We're gonna use that tension that we've built up to press back to that perpendicular position. Okay, let's do 2 more like this with no weight. I'm gonna show you from this angle. Okay, so we rotate, retract that scapula, keep that as we drive the elbow down. Now gravity is helping to push that elbow behind you into more shoulder adduction, pulling the elbow across behind you, and use that tension built up in the lat to press. We're gonna do that 1 more time, retract. You can untuck these toes if you've got a really deep range of motion in the hips, or if that toe tucked position is hurting you. So if the toes are a little uncomfortable there, you can untuck and press. All right, so let's try that on the opposite side. So now left knee is gonna be in front. We're gonna open towards 2 or 3 o'clock, and your body goes in the middle of that. Imagine you're picking up your external load. We're gonna press that overhead, sit that right hip towards the right heel, and then let that right arm go out in front of you. Okay, we get a nice stretch in the hips. We're gonna externally rotate, turning the palm, and then start with that retraction. Let the gravity pull that elbow back and down. Use that tension built up in the lat to press. Again, retract. That arm is going to stay perpendicular to the ceiling. So when we press, We're pressing straight up towards the ceiling. Okay, so we build up that tension in the lat and we use that lat to press that arm right back up. All right, so now if you're following along, we can try it with our external load. This is just 12 kilos, nice and light. Okay, key points to remember when we add load to this. Pause at the bottom. We are aiming for that deep, deep range of motion. The more external load you have, the deeper it's going to pull you into that range of motion. So we want to own that position, that range of motion, by being able to produce force out of it and to control the force going into it. Keep the base position nice and solid and keep that arm perpendicular to the ceiling without letting that shoulder creep up towards the ear. Okay, so let's go for 3 on each side. I'll show you from the front and then I'll show you from the back. So we find our base position, grab our external load, press overhead, sit that hip back, find our base hip hinge position. We gotta rotate that arm, drive the shoulder blade towards the spine as we pull down, find that pause at the bottom. Exhale to explode out of it. Let's do that 2 more times. Inhale, control the way down. Exhale, push out of it. 1 more time. Inhale, control down. And exhale. All right, now let's try that on the left. So we find our base position. Okay, we've got half kneeling, open that leg. Bring that external load overhead. We're gonna hinge that hip towards the right heel. Find your base position, rotate, drop that scapula as we pull to our end range. Let the elbow go as far as you can control to press out of it. 2 more. Control. So here's where that shoulder stability comes into play. Right, and we're working all of that posterior rotator cuff, that posterior side of the shoulder and the scapula. And then come on out of it. All right, and there you have it. One of my favorite variations of the press. Really great for shoulder stability, really great with combining strength and mobility together. This is gonna get your upper body really well-rounded and safe when doing all of your overhead lifts. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe and share with your friends. And if you have any questions about this movement, drop them in the comments below. I'll see you next time.